Indigenous rights and access to quality education are of utmost importance in any society. Education is a fundamental human right and essential for the development of any nation. In recent years, educational access and rights for Indigenous people have been a major issue in many countries. Around the world, Indigenous people have been historically marginalized and denied their right to access quality education. The United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, UNDRIP, in 2007 has provided a framework for recognizing the rights of Indigenous people. It states that Indigenous people have the right to quality education that is adapted to the specific needs of their culture and language. This includes the right to access education that is free, equitable and of a high quality in order to ensure that Indigenous people can reach their full potential. In order to ensure Indigenous people have access to quality education, governments must take steps to ensure Indigenous people are not discriminated against or excluded from educational opportunities. Governments should also provide adequate resources and support to Indigenous students to ensure they can succeed in their educational pursuits. This includes providing resources such as culturally appropriate learning materials, access to technology, and culturally sensitive teachers and administrators. It is also important to ensure Indigenous students are able to access post-secondary education. Many Indigenous people are unable to pursue higher education due to financial constraints and a lack of support and resources. It is important for governments to provide financial aid and other support to Indigenous students so that they can access post-secondary education. Finally, governments must also ensure that Indigenous people have access to quality education in their own language. Indigenous people should have the right to learn in their own language, as this helps to preserve their culture and identity. Governments should also ensure that Indigenous people are included in the curriculum and that their history and culture are accurately represented in educational materials. Indigenous rights and access to quality education are essential for the development and prosperity of any society. It is important for governments to ensure Indigenous people are not discriminated against or excluded from educational opportunities, and to provide resources and support to Indigenous students to ensure they can succeed in their educational pursuits. Governments must also ensure Indigenous people have access to quality education in their own language and that their history and culture are accurately represented in educational materials.